So I made a film called Look at Us Now, Mother, about a highly charged mother-daughter relationship and the transformation from hatred to love. It's about forgiveness. It's actually my story. And I'm in Washington, D.C. again at the Washington Jewish Film Festival because I made a funny short film a few years ago called My Nose about my mother's relentless campaign to get me to have a nose job. And it was due to the reaction of that film and people waiting in line to tell me their story. It didn't have to be about a nose, but their story of some hardship of a critical parent, usually a mother, and that they were still dealing with the issues decades later, and that parent could be long dead, that I decided I needed to make this film. Well, I just relived my childhood because in order to make this film, and obviously I had moved on with my life, but I knew I wanted to make this film and do this journey with my mother. The thing that I had to figure out is how am I going to tell the story of my childhood and not sound like a victim. And I remembered I kept diaries, and I kept diaries my entire life, and I found the box of diaries, and I actually reread them and I relived it. So at 8 years old, I was sort of like in the midst of things. At 8 years old, it was not good. I was ripped apart from head to toe, and I know I'm not alone. That's why I made this film. There was never anything right about me, how I look. Actually, I blew my hair straight today. It took me a good hour or more, but I have very curly and, curly, wavy, frizzy hair. So Mom thought that was really bad and was having my hair professionally straightened since I was third grade. And everything, my nose, which I have kept. And for those people who live in Washington, I ended up years ago on the cover of the Washington Post style section with my profile against the profile of the Indian on the buffalo nickel, for those who remember the buffalo nickel, because my mother always said that my nose looks like the Indian on the buffalo nickel, which she's kind of right. And the journalist of that article said, if you have a mother like Gayle Kirschenbaum, you better get yourself into psychoanalysis. I showed it to Mom, and she read it, and she goes, great, bad press is better than no press. I'm on the cover of the Washington Post. So actually, that was a turning point for me, because when I saw Mom's reaction to that article, I knew she had a thick skin, and I knew she would be okay to go ahead and make this film. I also knew she was really funny and smart. She wasn't funny when I was growing up, but in her later years, her humor has really come out. I wasn't looking for her approval. I needed her to be part of this movie. I needed my mother to agree to make this movie, because it's about our story, and we would be going into therapy together, and we'd be on this journey of forgiveness. So I needed her. I couldn't make the movie alone. It was about following a journey of a mother and daughter who had a pretty difficult relationship, and our journey to forgiveness. At 18, things were picking up because I was out of the house. As soon as the end of my 16th year, I had already gotten into university young, and I left school in the middle of the year. I left high school. I graduated early. So my birthday is the end of December. I turned 16. I got into college, and right after the holidays, I was up in college 200 miles away. And that was probably the best thing I did for myself, because I was no longer coming home and living with my abuser in enemy territory, because it wasn't good with anybody else in my family. And I went at a time and a place to a really good school. It was a state university, but the kids were really smart, and it was a hippie time, and I was a hippie. And it was like a hippie school, and I was always a very creative, sensitive person, and I was an art major, so I was now around like-minded people, and I was away from home. I didn't have to come home to somebody. I didn't know what she was going to do, what would trigger her, and how she would unleash on me. So it was fabulous, and suddenly everybody loved my hippie hair. I wasn't straightening it anymore. It was long and wavy and frizzy, or someone said you had lion's hair, and people loved my hair. So everything I was criticized about, I was being complimented for. So it was wonderful. There was definitely plenty of physical, and I think that was also the time period. I mean, I think it wasn't uncommon to get smacked or hit, or a big thing for me was my hair, because I had really long hair, and it would be down to here. So, and I, was always told, put it back, put it in a ponytail. So I'd have it in a ponytail. And I'm holding my neck because I'm obsessing over aging right now. And, is this better, everybody? I was told when we did a shoot that you could tape your neck back. So I'm not taped, guys. This is the real thing. This is a real thing, Hollywood. Okay, you're seeing everything, even the bags and the eyes, before the ocular plastic surgeon gets brought on. Just joking. Anyway, but they would take my hair and they would yank me across, the kitchen floor. So being like this was kind of common. So it's interesting about physical versus emotional abuse, because the physical abuse just kind of wears off. You don't really remember it. It's the emotional abuse that lingers. And that's what you need to deal with. That's what and I know I'm not alone. I know plenty of people watching this have their own story, and it's similar, it varies. But what we have to work with is getting rid of that anger and resentment. And this is what I tell people. It's an addiction. So, we all have, many of us have had addictions, whether it's food or alcohol or substance or whatever. And in fact, I was a secret eater. I had a food addiction from like teenage years till 32 when I went through windshield. But that was because she thought I was fat, and I wasn't fat, and so I became a secret eater. But as soon as I let go of that addiction, which I had for a long time, it's freedom. You're not obsessing. You're not thinking about it. You're not driven by it. It's not what you're sitting, when you're with other people, thinking I have to get away, or I have to have a cigarette, or I have to have a drink, or I have to go buy those pinwheels and binge on them when nobody's around in my house. So when you've been abused emotionally by a parent or somebody really close to you, and usually it's a parent, and you have not forgiven them, which you do for yourself and takes time and work, and you spend your life with that anger, resentment, and you succeed, you have a great career, you're type A, you have spouses and children and homes and cars and all the material wealth to show your great success and your awards and your whatever you've done in your career. But if you were really hurt badly by, as I said, a parent as a child, and you have not forgiven that person who could be long dead, I am sure that is underneath you. That is affecting you in your relationships and in your health. So the key is to unleash that anger and resentment, unleash that addiction to holding on to it. And that is my mission now. I made this film, which is my journey, and now my mission is to teach people how to get to that place. And that's why when people keep saying, what's your next movie? It's my movement. We're building this movement focused on forgiveness and healing that we're going to tailor between mothers and daughters, because it's my story, but it's going to be relatable to everybody, and create these initiatives and teach people how to forgive. And I have these steps that I teach people. So the word abuse didn't exist when I grew up, and child abuse was not like a common, no one used those words. And so I remember when I heard somebody say, it was a sister-in-law of mine who was in my life since I was 13, who then became a counselor. And she witnessed things, and she said years later that I had been abused. But it was a time period, It was, and a lot of things were done behind closed doors, too. So, I think, it was just commonplace. It was that generation, too. It was, I'm not here to vilify my mother. I mean, that's why I forgave her. She did the best she could. She herself was a wounded child, and in my film, it is a journey into her life. And when she keeps saying, I don't know, I don't remember, we're off to therapists, together, because I'm trying to figure out what happened to you. And I knew, the good news is, when I was born, and I remember her rage on me from my earliest memories, I knew I didn't do anything wrong. I knew I just kind of arrived, I'm here, I'm in this world, and so I knew there was something wrong with her. I knew there was something going on with her, because I watched her love and adore my brothers, and I was like the slave of the Cinderella. So I knew there was something going on here. So I wanted to know I was always interested in what made people tick. And having fell victim to my mother's rage, I want to know what happened to her in her childhood. So that's been a lifelong quest. And, you know, these are secrets that were kept for decades because she's of the generation, you don't hang out your dirty laundry. My grandmother said, you know, what would she always say? Well, she said, you don't hang out your dirty laundry. When you laugh, the world laughs with you. When you cry alone. She always said that. Ooh. So you find out in the movie, Look at Us Now, Mother. But one thing I will say is my mother craved and craves attention, and particularly from men. So I'm sure you all know what narcissism is and a narcissist is. So I think narcissistic women, if they can control the gender of what they're going to give birth to, they should just stick with having boys. I think there's having another female arrive in their home rains on their parade because they crave the attention of men. So I think it was gender related and many other things. You know, it also, as one of the therapists said, I was essentially, I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but I was very different than everybody in my family. And that's why I sort of start my film with, did you ever feel like you were born into the wrong family? And I made these pins and we have these bracelets that say I survived my family. Because I came in, I arrived to this world as a very sensitive, super sensitive person into a family that's not sensitive. And I don't know who believes this or not believes in this, but I believe I arrived as an old soul that had been around. And I think that helped me because when I arrived, that's why I didn't take it personally. I mean, I didn't, even though I was ripped apart from head to toe, and the first thing everyone says to me, I love your nose and you're beautiful. Well, I thank everybody, but you know, my nose never bothered me, and I think, you know, if there's a God who's good to me, I'm happy with how I came out. I am obsessing over aging now, and hope these bags aren't too bad. But I feel like I came in with some knowledge. So my scars were not so much self-esteem. I didn't grow up feeling ugly, even though I was told everything was horrible about me physically. I grew up without feeling any love and being attacked all the time. So, you know, I'm not married, and that's not an accident. Because I remember saying at some point in my life, I'm never going to let anybody hurt me like that again. Because what do we all want? We want to be heard, acknowledged, and we want to be loved. So it was really hard growing up not feeling loved and also being lied to a lot. So trust has been my second issue.